Welcome to Why Is This a Podcast? I'm your host, Kieran Watts. Thanks so much for being here. I'm recording this on the day of the Welsh Assembly elections, and obviously this is going to go out after those elections have happened, and we'll probably know how they went. And I just want to say, regardless of whether you're the person you wanted to won, your preferred party. If you voted, thanks for voting. It's really special to participate in a democracy, in a democratic process, and to be politically active and to go out to the polls and make your voices heard. Because when things are, well, for want of a better word, shit, it's incumbent upon us, the electorate, to try and change that through our vote, through our action. So thank you, everybody who voted, and thank you to those who ran. It's obviously not easy, especially when it's regional and local government, to get the kind of attention that people get in a national election in the UK. But thank you for your efforts. Thank you for trying to advance the cause of Wales. Before I get into my interview, which I'm really excited about, I do just want to mention the tragedy that happened with the Mexico City Metro. An elevated section of the metro collapsed. At the time I'm recording this, at least 25 people sadly have died, and more than 70 people have been injured. By the time this goes out, those numbers may well go up, though I hope that they don't. But do just want to mention that, and extend my love, extend my prayers, extend my thoughts, my condolences to those who have lost loved ones in that incident, and wishes for the recoveries of those who were injured. And also, it's COVID. COVID-19 obviously continues to pummel the planet, and India is witnessing a massive surge. It's really embattled by a second wave. So if you are financially able, please do consider donating to the organizations that are working to provide relief to not just India, but to many other countries that are working to mitigate the many disasters that this pandemic has foisted upon us. But with all that said, I'm really thrilled to introduce my guest for this episode. She's a public relations specialist. Please welcome Léa Fudez.
Hi, bonjour.
Bonjour. She joins me from Orléans.
That's it.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. This is my first podcast, maybe not the last. We'll see.
Hopefully not. I'll let you know at the end how you did.
Okay, great. You can give me
I'll let you know at the end how you did, and I'll just sort of like gently, virtually take you aside and go.
Then I will ask Mark to give me a media training.
If somebody asks you to come on, podcast. Full disclosure before we get into the questions, Léa and I do work together for Hederis, but Hederis and Why Is This a Podcast completely separate. So I just wanted to make that very, very clear for everybody watching. But it is a joy to work with Léa, and a joy to have you on. First question, really, before we get into the actual questions, is how has COVID-19 been for you?
Well, it's been such like a up and down situation. Um, for me, well, thankfully, I've not been affected by COVID-19, and my family members who have only experienced, mild symptoms of fatigue and mild fever, but nothing too bad. So I'm really grateful for that. And I guess for me, I wouldn't say it really impacted my life that much. I'm grateful to still have my job, and I continue my daily life. But of course, a lot of my projects of traveling around and seeing my friends have been postponed, which of course makes me really sad. But other than that, it hasn't really changed my life that much, which I'm really grateful for. So.
Something to hear, and as I mentioned, obviously you and I work together, so we speak often. I want, as I mentioned, you're from Orléans. How's the COVID-19 pandemic playing out there?
Well, it's not getting better, I would say. I mean, I'm not sure if you heard, but on Wednesdays we had 26,000 new cases, so that's quite a lot. So I guess it's slowly decreasing, but it's very high, especially if you compare to the numbers of cases from last year at the same time. But despite this, we still had the government unveiling the plan for the end of the lockdown.
We're going to come to the government in a moment, but did you expect the cases to be higher right now than at this time last year? Was that an expectation, or did that come as a surprise to you?
Well, I guess a year ago, I would say that it would be a surprise, but with everything that's happened and the different variants, it's not a surprise, no.
To come back to the French government, how are you rating under Le Président Macron and his government? How are you rating their response to COVID-19 at the moment and throughout?
And throughout, okay. At the moment, I do believe they are doing their best in terms of, if it depends on the point of view, but I would say response in terms of financial help. I do believe they are doing the best that they could possibly do. But in terms of public health messaging, I think that they are really struggling. And this has proven right when you say, throughout the pandemic, how I see the response. And I feel like they have tried their best. That is true, but we had constant different messages every day. So on the first few months, you would have the messages that would be, do not wear a mask, this is not necessary. And then all of a sudden, it's completely necessary, you have to have one. Mixed messaging. And so that would make I think that's one of the reasons why, and maybe you would come to that later, but the population is kind of mistrusting the government and is kind of not everyone is convinced about masks because of that issue that happened from the beginning, which is that at first we were convinced that we did not need mask, and now we have to wear one every time that we go out. So,
and there's obviously the element of like misinformation as well.
Yeah.
And that's sort of something that we're seeing with vaccines in particular. And particularly with sort of controversy in the EU with the AstraZeneca vaccine in particular.
That's impacted us a lot.
Yeah, that is fueling very much sort of this. I'm hesitant to use the phrase anti-vaxxer or anti-masker. I almost want to sort of say an anti-science sentiment, because people, I think, have this misconception that scientists should be infallible.
Yeah.
The scientists can't get things wrong. But like any profession, they're going to get things wrong, or things are going to change. The evidence is going to, like with masks, for example,
Yeah.
is one thing, and then people are going to be like, well, they were wrong then, so they're wrong now, so screw them. And I think that that's so dangerous in a time like this, which we're going to come on to in a bit when we talk about your career and sort of public relations and communications. I want to ask, if you don't mind me asking, have you had the vaccine yourself?
No, I have not yet.
Do you know anybody who's resistant to getting it?
Yes, I do.
I don't want you to name them.
I will not name them. Yeah, no, but I can tell you I know some people.
I'm not going to ask James to sort of like put a name in shame,
Disclaimer.
a name and shame, like just a massive photo of them with their address and their phone number. But if you don't mind me asking, why are they sort of hesitant about getting the vaccine?
Mhm. So there's different reasons, but I know some people who just believe that in general vaccine is some kind of this is something that is external to your body and so should not, you know, come with what is biologically possible, I guess. So they mistrust what the vaccine can or cannot do to you. Some people do believe that vaccine is kind of, you know, a toxic external, you know, thing to inject in your body, and they believe that it can kind of affect you in a bad way. And you have a lot of other people who are just still a bit concerned about secondary effects and the fact that usually it takes almost a decade to build a vaccine and have, you know, the approvals to go to the next steps, and now it's just taken us less than a year, and a lot of people are worried that it went too fast and that it could, you know, unveil like some kind of issues in future that we would not have been able to prevent.
I think that's an important point, on the basis that, like, you know, you say the sort of the phrase anti-vaxxers, and people automatically think, well, they're a bunch of, they're a bunch of bastard lunatics. And it's sort of like, actually, that's not necessarily the case. They're people who have, they are genuinely worried for their safety or the safety of their children. And that's why sort of the messaging that you mentioned, that you referred to not a couple of moments ago, is so important. It was like, the vaccine is fine. You will get side effects, but they, in the grand scheme of things, are likely to be mild. Because I've had, for example, Gardasil.
I have as well.
The vaccine against human papillomavirus, for people who don't know. And when I've had those vaccines, I do get side effects. I tend to get headaches. And my arm tends to hurt for quite a couple of days afterwards. But then I'm there like, it's gonna, minimize my risk of getting sick. So I'll take a couple of days of pain, mild pain in my arm, or a couple of days of a headache. That seems like a fair trade. And for people who aren't aware, human papillomavirus (HPV) accounts for I think the majority of cases of cervical cancer. For those of you who haven't figured this out yet, I'm a man, so obviously I'm not going to get cervical cancer. But it also, Gardasil also protects against oral cancer, various types of cancer.
Mm.
So so I took it, and it was like after I had my first shot, and I felt rough, and I was like, but never at one point did I think, oh, I'm not going to get the second. And
Mm.
so, COVID, should like should have the same attitude.
Yeah.
And I want to come to messaging as well in the context of this country, because our messaging's been terrible.
Yeah.
Because our Prime Minister, um, Boris Johnson, he's likened it to a bugle, a
Mm.
shoot of the bugle or something like that, he said. And you're just there like, just tell them to get the shot, you idiot. Just tell them to get the damn shot.
Mm.
So it's like that. So like, messaging is very, very important, and that's where I want to sort of center this next question around with you, Léa, which is about public relations, communications, and why it's so important in a crisis like this.
To me, like, I mean, as we said, of course, like, messaging is really important, and I believe that what you want to do with messages also is to build trustworthy information, because at the end of the day, maybe I'm going off track here, but I feel like if people do not trust you, you can give any messages you want. If people don't trust you, then there is no point. So you just have to be as trustworthy as possible, give facts. And I think also this is where public relations meets journalism. Like, this is the common goal of both, is to give trustworthy information and facts. So I think that in a crisis like this is where public relations can really help. Of course, governments and different organizations to just be out there and say to the public, this is the information, this is where we found information, please, like, you can get this kind of how can I say information but with a synonym, because I've been saying it a lot. To just give every possible facts and where people can find the truth, and then also I think this is also people's responsibility to be curious and find that truth, because of course, I mean, if you believe in I don't want to name anyone, but some governments who are telling you, or COVID-19 is just a flu. Well, of course, then this is going to be an issue in the future. So
It's not. So it's not the flu.
it's not. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You could die. I sometimes wonder if that should be, how we communicate public health messages. It's just somebody going out in front of like the screen and just going, "It's not the flu. You could die. Get the bloody shot."
Yeah. And one of the things that I think maybe our messaging here in France was not really included is really the risk benefits facts, which have not really been spoken to at first, because the government was really trusting. This is one thing that they do say the word trust a lot. They say we trust the French citizen to make the right decisions, but at the same time, they're not giving you the information to make that right decision. So they haven't really talked about the risk benefits. And until the point where they saw all of the, this Ipsos polls that were saying that more than 60% of French people would not get the vaccine if they had the chance to, which is really, really, really sad to hear. But also because a lot of people had no idea that if you compare the risk of having a side effect of the vaccine and dying from taking your car to go to the grocery shop, then you have more risks of dying in your car than taking the vaccine. So
I think clarity,
yeah,
me, is a huge one. So it's important that we're clear as well.
exactly.
Because obviously science, I mean, I didn't like science in school. Sorry to my science teachers if you're watching this. But I didn't like science in school. I always found it a bit too complicated, wasn't really my thing. But if you have somebody just sort of come out and go, look, this is the vaccine, this is what it is, this is how it's happened so quickly. You may get some side effects, but it's still worth getting it. Etc. I think clarity and messaging and making it simple, not in terms of like simple, like patronizing people or condescending to people, but just making it just very, very clear that, like you say, it's trust, but you've got to give people a reason to trust you.
Yeah.
And they don't people and they've been, I think a lot of governments have been especially bad at doing that during this.
Yeah.
I want to get into, just before I let you go, about what got you into public relations in the first place.
Public relations, well, I kind of, to be very honest, I never really knew what it meant until I got into, my higher education. And so I first had a bachelor in business management, and I realized that I was doing that and I liked it, but also I didn't feel like it would take me to having a job with a purpose or something. I thought that I was, just doing something to get a degree. So I started kind of researching what is it that I like to do in my degree that I would love to do in my job as well. And one thing is that I always loved writing. I'm not sure if I'm good at it, but I know I love to write. And as I was researching, the different kind of courses that I could take, I kind of started to notice that I was always putting the same keywords, and it was, communications and writing. So that's how I found the degree that I pursued then, and that's how I got into it. And I have to admit, at first I was afraid that I wouldn't like it, but I ended up really liking it. And at the end of my degree, I mean, by the time I graduated, I knew that what I wanted to do is to just be a part of kind of a thinking behind messaging and campaigns, and just kind of telling stories, and whether it's by writing or just being a part of the thinking behind, that's really what I wanted to do. So
very inspiring.
Thank you.
And but in all seriousness, you are really, really good at it, and it's a joy to work with you.
Thank you.
And it's been a joy to interview you as well. For my Is This Podcast, I am your host, Kieran Watts. Au revoir.